You sit across from her. The candlelight reflects in her eyes. She's laughing at your joke, not out of politeness, but with real physical warmth. Her body leans slightly forward. Her pupils widen. Her lips part between sips of wine. In that moment, the atmosphere thickens with something electric. You feel it. A magnetic tension hums between you. Then it vanishes. She shifts her weight back. She checks her phone. Her attention fades. And why, no matter how good you look, no matter how successful or smooth you are, if you don't know how to touch the right place in her mind, she will never feel that deep, involuntary pull toward you. The air cools, and you re-left with the same haunting question that's followed you through every close encounter that didn't lead where you wanted. The one that decides whether or not she sees you as a potential partner or a forgettable encounter. You will learn how to provoke her unconscious, not manipulate, not lie, but provoke, awaken, and ignite. Underneath our civilized behavior is a boiling sea of unspoken fantasies, ancient instincts, guilt, repression, fear, and erotic hunger. They try to convince her. They appeal to her logic. They explain why they're a good choice. They try to be agreeable, safe, predictable. And the man who can awaken her repressed fantasies is the one who controls her attraction. That is the thesis of this video. Every idea, every example, every spiral we explore will orbit this central law. When something is left unresolved, when the puzzle isn't solved, it consumes attention. And when a man presents himself as slightly out of reach, slightly difficult to read, slightly dangerous in the right way, a woman's unconscious locks in. A split between the social self and the sexual self. The social self wants the safe, loving, predictable man. But the sexual self, the part buried in the unconscious, wants the man who disrupts her image, the man who threatens her control, the man who makes her feel something she cannot explain, not because she understands him, but because she wants to. When you disrupt her patterns, when you carry mystery, tension, emotional gravity, you awaken her sexual self. But female desire does not respond to logic. It responds to contradiction. Because he knows that attraction lives in the space between clarity and curiosity. They ask more questions, agree more often, become more available. But the man who knows how to flip her switch does something different. He introduces contrast. He reveals edges, not in ways that scare her, but in ways that activate her, to mystery, to danger, cloaked in elegance. A woman's erotic system is built on conflict, not chaos, but psychic dissonance. That is why the nice guy often feels invisible, and why the man who knows how to touch the forbiddens in her mind becomes unforgettable. And for the modern woman, this is especially true. She lives in a world that asks her to be polite, professional, safe, respectable. But the part of her that feels desire is not polite. It is not safe. It is raw, unpredictable, and primitive. That part of her is asleep in most interactions. The first moment of attraction. Imagine a woman scrolling through a dating app. Dozens, maybe hundreds of profiles. Men smiling with dogs, listing careers, saying things like kind, ambitious, family-oriented. All of them trying to signal safety. But then she pauses. One profile catches her attention. The man isn't smiling. He looks into the camera with composure, with weight. His bio says almost nothing. Just one sentence. Not for everyone. And unless a man knows how to awaken it, he will always be stuck in that limbo between being liked and being wanted. Her finger hovers. She feels something, but she doesn't know why. That's the first flicker of unconscious desire. He didn't explain himself. He didn't try to win her approval. He projected ambiguity. And in that ambiguity, her unconscious saw a blank canvas, a mystery. And where there is mystery, there is projection. And where there is projection, there is potential obsession. What changed? What did I do wrong? What did I fail to trigger? Most men never get the answer. They move on, repeating the same patterns, hoping that next time their charm, their looks, their timing will align just right. But beneath her sudden withdrawal lies something far more precise, far more predictable than you'd ever believe. Sigmund Freud, the founding father of psychoanalysis, believed that female desire is not governed by what is said or done consciously. It is ruled by something deeper, more ancient, more dangerous. Beneath her politeness, beneath her preferences, beneath her surface-level attraction, there is a switch. Not a metaphorical one. A real psychological mechanism that determines whether or not she feels arousal in your presence. And the only way to flip that switch is to stop speaking to her conscious mind and start speaking to her unconscious. This video is not about tricks or tactics. It's not about lines or strategies. It's about understanding how female desire actually works. Freud believed that we are not as rational as we like to think. Here is the promise of this session. By the end of this video, you will understand how to bypass the surface-level noise and trigger the real switch inside her. Now, here's the mistake that most men make. Freud's core insight is this: erotic desire lives in the unconscious. So what does that actually look like in practice? Let's start at the beginning of the spiral. She pauses. Freud taught that the unconscious mind seeks to complete unfinished stories. Most men try to be understood to win a woman. The seductive man is willing to be misunderstood. Freud also believed that every woman carries within her what he called the Madonna-whore conflict. When you enter an interaction trying to be safe, you speak to her social self. So how do we apply this in real-world terms? Let's move into the second spiral, the early dating phase. On the second or third date, most men try to build comfort. He listens closely, but he doesn't validate everything she says. He notices her strengths, but challenges her subtly. He brings up an old story with a slight darkness in it. Something about risk, about loss, about power. Something that makes her see he carries shadows. He doesn't perform. He reveals, but only in fragments. Just enough to make her wonder what else is behind the curtain. Freud believed that tension between opposites is what fuels erotic energy. Comfort without danger becomes boredom. Attention without withdrawal becomes dependency. Softness without dominance becomes platonic. The seductive man alternates. He is warm and then distant, present and then unavailable, with intensity, with something she can't control. And it is that lack of control, that loss of psychic predictability, that ignites real desire. Open and then closed, not to play games, but to maintain psychic tension, to keep her unconscious guessing. In this phase, her body may not even realize what's happening, but her nervous system starts to associate your presence with activation. And in that space, she begins to desire you not just for how you make her feel, but for who you allow her to become. The committed relationship, the sexual escalation, the moment when most men lose the very desire they once inspired. The things we aren't allowed to feel, the impulses we were taught to hide, the roles we believe we must play. All of these create erotic energy when challenged. When a woman is used to being adored, she often craves being challenged. But he is only confirming what her unconscious already suspects, that she holds the power and he is afraid to lose her. The woman who once craved you now sees you as predictable, safe, comprehensible, and in that predictability, the unconscious shuts down. You've been distant lately. Is there someone else? Because the feminine psyche cannot desire what it fully understands. His scent, the cadence of his voice. And still, he holds something back, a depth she can feel but not name. She watches him from across the kitchen, sensing something behind his eyes that doesn't belong to her. Not cruelty, not distance, but sovereignty. But if something in the man remains untamed, just enough to stay beyond her full comprehension, she will orbit him like a planet in gravitational tension. When she's used to controlling every social interaction, she often longs to be claimed. And the moment she senses that she's not the center of your world, but a guest in your kingdom, that's when her obsession returns. Not because she is weak, but because her strength exhausts her. It means I love you, but I don't belong to you. Not fully. You whisper in her ear, you want to hear that I'm yours. But what turns you on is knowing I'm still mine. It desires what it cannot fully control. And when you master this energy, this psychic resistance, her body will respond without her permission. Smiles slowly. That line, simple, true, flips a hidden switch. Because it honors her longing and her fear. It says, I desire you, but I am not conquered. No, just someone I'm remembering how to be. And when a man enters her space, who does not defer, who does not flatter mindlessly, but instead recognizes her intensity and meets it with calm authority, something deep inside her begins to awaken. Let's spiral deeper into the unconscious. Freud taught that desire is often tangled with repression, and it is flipped when a woman feels seen not only in her goodness, but in her darkness. When you signal, without words, that you can handle not just her beauty, but her chaos, her contradictions, her unspeakable cravings. This is the switch. Because what he just did was reawaken a fear she secretly wants to feel. The fear that she could lose him. And in that fear, desire. It is not a trick. It is not a formula. It is a portal into the unconscious. You become the man who allows her to be more than her persona. And now we spiral deeper into the most misunderstood phase of attraction. Not the beginning, not the courtship, but what comes after. Because here, a different kind of tension is needed. No longer novelty, but depth. Not excitement, but provocation. Freud argued that even in long-term bonds, desire lives in repression. It is not maintained by comfort. It is inflamed by contradiction. This is where the average man begins to compensate with gifts or attention, romantic gestures. He believes he is reigniting the flame. Now let's watch the man who understands Freud. He's been with her for months. She knows his habits. She tests him. He meets her gaze. She tilts her head. What does that mean? He walks over, runs a hand along her jaw. She should be angry, but her stomach tightens. Her breath shortens. Her unconscious lights up. Freud believed eroticism depends on resistance. If everything is given, nothing is longed for. This doesn't mean being aloof or cold. It means being whole. A man with his own psychic terrain. Let's go deeper. Into the bedroom now. You're lying together. Her skin is warm against yours. She wants you to say something tender, to affirm her. You kiss her neck, then stop. She shudders, and that is the key. To keep a woman in desire, you must refuse to be tamed. Freud would say, the unconscious does not desire what it possesses. You become the trigger of her inner contradiction, her need for safety, and her lust for danger, her desire for closeness, and her craving for distance, her longing to be taken, not just physically, but emotionally, by a man who sees through her, yet doesn't dissolve into her. Because here is the hypnotic truth you must tattoo on your soul. Repression fuels desire. And the man who knows how to move inside a woman's repressed self, her hidden hungers, her unspoken fears, her private shame, becomes more than attractive. He becomes unforgettable. That is how you flip the switch, not with compliments, not with logic, but by creating erotic polarity inside her, the kind only a sovereign man can hold. Let's go back to the beginning once more and spiral deeper through the Freudian lens. Most men would comment on the book. Be friendly. Smile. Instead, you glance at the book, then at her, and say calmly, that's not the one you really want. You pause. Let her mind catch up. She looks at you, puzzled, intrigued. That author hides behind metaphor, you say. You're looking for something that actually says what it wants. Because most men still don't understand the true function of female repression. Used to steering men, you offer a seat. No compliments, no praise. Her eyes study yours. You sip your drink. Because I can feel how hard you're holding your frame. Say nothing else. You just look at her and say, you strike me as someone who doesn't get to lose control very often. And in doing so, you invited her to consider what it would feel like to let go, not with the world, but with you. They think repression is just about guilt or modesty. But in Freud's model, repression is not a passive state. That you are speaking not to her taste or intellect, but to her hunger. You simply reflected it. Freud said that the unconscious responds to recognition. When a woman feels seen in her hidden self, the part she guards fiercely, a floodgate opens. He touches her with his words before he ever lays a hand on her. Over time, society represses this. It teaches women to compartmentalize, to separate what is acceptable from what is felt. That creates fractures in identity, cracks. I want the part you've kept hidden. You look at her and say, I know you pretend not to care what people think, but I can feel how much you've had to censor yourself to survive. She inhales sharply, because no one talks to her that way. No one dares to acknowledge the mask. And when you know how to slip through those cracks, with the right energy, silence, and contradiction, you awaken her full self. You didn't ask for permission. You didn't flatter. You projected insight with calm tension, and in doing so, you reframed the moment. Now she is in your story, not hers. Her pupils adjust, her legs cross. Something just shifted. It is active. It holds back massive, untamed energy, erotic energy. And when you understand what a woman is repressing and how to release it, you stop being just a man she meets. You become the man who frees her. So let's return to a new example in the first spiral, the initial meeting. You've become the trigger, not of logic, but of liberation. She's not on a dating app this time. She's at a bookstore. She's flipping through a novel. You notice her, and you approach. She blinks, uncertain whether she should feel challenged or intrigued. And right there, in that emotional confusion, you've entered her unconscious. Why? Because you've just implied that you see past her surface, past the persona. Freud would say you activated a buried erotic tension. You challenged her superego, the internalized social self, and in that challenge, made her feel alive. Let's move into a new second spiral scenario, deeper into dating. You meet for drinks. She walks in, fully composed. She's used to controlling conversations. She freezes slightly. She laughs nervously. Why would you say that? You tilt your head, watching her. She swallows. What happened? You spoke directly to the tension she lives with. The unspoken burden of always being poised. And the key is this: you didn't demand it. You didn't even invite it explicitly. At that point, she is not evaluating whether she wants to kiss you. She is wondering why your presence feels different, why she feels nervous, why her breath changes. Let us go even further, deeper into the sexual subconscious Freud mapped through his theory of polymorphous perversity. Freud believed that we are all born with multiple zones of pleasure, not just physical, but psychological. The seductive man doesn't just aim for the body. He triggers dormant fantasies she barely admits to herself. Let's say you're lying beside her. You haven't touched her yet. She whispers, "You don't know me." And you smile. "I know who you had to become." Her breath deepens. Her shoulders relax. Her guard drops. This is how desire becomes uncontrollable. Not because you're attractive, but because you've walked directly into the gap between who she is and who she longs to be. You are no longer in the room. You are in her psyche. Freud's insight was not that desire is dirty or dangerous. His insight was that desire is honest. And the more a woman represses that honesty, the more erotic charge it contains when finally released. That is the power of a man who knows how to flip the switch. He does not pursue. He provokes. He does not ask. He claims with presence. He does not flatter. He unlocks. And now we come to the final spiral: long-term relationships and advanced erotic polarity. The man who wants to maintain desire over time must understand the dynamic of repetition compulsion. Freud described it as the unconscious need to replay unresolved emotional patterns from childhood until they are resolved. Most women are not aroused by consistency. They are aroused by complexity, and more specifically, by the chance to transform a man who refuses to be tamed. The seductive man does not give her full access to his emotions on command, not because he's withholding, but because he understands that polarity dies when full psychic transparency is given without friction. He allows glimpses, moments of real vulnerability, but then he retreats, not to manipulate, to allow the unconscious to stay alive. A woman cannot crave what she can predict. She cannot eroticize what she fully understands. That is why mystery is not optional. It is structural. It is the architecture of long-term sexual energy. Even in love, a man must remain sovereign, not distant, not cold, but deep enough in himself that her soul feels challenged, that her feminine core feels called, not by a man who follows her, but by a man who leads her into the dark corners of her own desire. Let's give one final example. You've been with her for a year. Things feel routine. She comes home frustrated from work. She tries to pick a fight. She says, "You never listen. You always act like you know better." Instead of defending yourself, you walk over. You place your hand on her cheek. You hold eye contact. And you say, slowly, "I don't argue with little girls who are scared they can't control their men." She stares at you, stunned, offended, but her breath catches. Her lips tremble. Her eyes fill, not with anger, but with something more primal. She's not mad. She's activated. Because in that moment, you didn't placate her mask. You named her fear. You grounded it. You broke the illusion. This is dangerous territory. It requires calibration, presence, command. But when done with mastery, it doesn't create conflict. It creates submission without shame, a melting of ego, a returning to trust. And this, ultimately, is the reason Freud matters to us. He taught that to understand a human being, you cannot just watch their behavior. You must enter the conflict between who they are and what they hide, between what they say they want and what their unconscious craves. When you become the man who operates in that layer, you no longer chase women. You wake them. So here is your final invocation. You are not here to perform. You are here to become the man whose presence speaks directly to the feminine unconscious. You are here to hold tension, to create contrast, to offer silence and stillness in a world addicted to noise and validation. You are here to flip the switch, not by pressing, but by provoking. Let your presence challenge her persona. Let your energy seduce her contradictions. Let your words awaken her fantasies. And let your command hold her chaos. Because in the end, the man who understands Freud does not need to chase. He understands that every woman walks through the world carrying a secret self she longs to surrender. And all she needs is a man powerful enough to receive it. Now step forward. Watch the next session. Let's awaken not just the woman, but the magnetic force inside you that makes her hunger for your presence. The spiral continues.